I never thought I'd live to see the day where we'd have to talk about something like this, especially with my wife, who I've been with for almost 2 decades. We've been through so much together, raising kids, career ups and downs, and the regular joys and struggles of family life. We always believed we were doing great. But that evening, as we sat down for dinner and Martha said, "We need to talk," something inside me just broke. My heart sank into my chest, like I instinctively knew this conversation wasn't going to be easy. We need to talk, it's the kind of phrase every man dreads hearing, especially after being married for so long. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Had she been unfaithful? Was she thinking of leaving me? My mind raced in all directions, trying to find some kind of explanation. I sat there across the table from her, my hands shaking slightly, and my heart beating faster than usual. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but the worry inside me was already growing. She looked at me and took a sip of her wine. I immediately noticed she'd barely touched her food, just picking at it. Her movements were tense, though she tried to hide it. I watched her closely, analyzing every action, every slight change in her expression, desperate to understand what was coming. What could possibly be so serious that she felt the need to bring it up over dinner? I couldn't take it any longer. "Did you cheat on me, Martha?" The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Her face twisted slightly, her eyes widened in shock. "No, of course not," she quickly replied, sounding genuinely offended. But the way she emphasized the word cheat sent a chill down my spine. I felt a strange sense of relief, though the tension inside me hadn't completely disappeared. "If it's not that, then what? Are you planning on leaving me?" I asked, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. She looked stunned. "God, Thomas, where are you getting these ideas from? I would never leave you. I love you," she reassured me. Her voice was warm and soft, and for a moment, I wanted to believe that all of this was just in my head. But conversations like this don't just happen out of nowhere. We both said the usual words about love and our future together, but the heaviness in the air didn't lift. "Then what's going on? Are you sick?" I asked, now clearly worried, my voice betraying the panic creeping up inside me. "No, it's not that," she said, her gaze dropping, a hint of sadness on her face. "It's just, it feels like we've been drifting apart lately. We're not the same as we used to be. When the kids were around, everything felt different. But now that they're gone, I feel like we've lost a part of ourselves." "Lost? What are you talking about?" I asked, feeling that familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. I wasn't ready for this conversation. "We've become like roommates," she said calmly. "I feel like we spend less and less time together. You're always busy with work, I have my own things, and when we finally do have time, we're too tired to really be together. Everything's just become routine." I thought about her words. When was the last time we were really close? I honestly couldn't remember. "It's been a while," I admitted, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Every time I try, you always seem to shut me down." She nodded. "I know. I've often been too tired. But that never used to stop us, remember? We used to make love several times a week. Now it feels like a rare occasion." "Yeah, that's true," I agreed, feeling a wave of irritation creeping in. I'd always thought it was her constant rejections that were the main problem, but now it seemed more complicated. "But I don't want things to stay this way," she continued, her eyes full of a kind of quiet desperation. "I want to get back what we had. I want us to be close again. Our lives have become so routine. We're stuck, Thomas. We need to shake things up." Stuck. I struggled to wrap my head around what she was saying. I thought everything was fine. Sure, work takes up a lot of time, and we get tired, but I never thought it was a real issue for us. I loved her and was willing to do anything for her. I'm not bored, I protested, even though I wasn't sure if that was completely true. Really? She raised an eyebrow at me with a hint of a smile. And what did you do last night? Watched that treasure hunting show again. She always teased me about how little actually happened in those programs, even though I loved watching them. Well, yeah, I admitted. They didn't find anything, just more dirt and old wood. There you go, she said, shaking her head. You're comfortable with this routine, but I'm tired of it. We used to have a spark, a passion. Now we're just existing next to each other. We've become neighbors. Her words hit me hard. It stung because it felt true. I'd heard this story before from other couples, how, over time, they lose that connection, how daily life and routine gradually smother the romance. You always think it won't happen to you, that your marriage is different. But here I was, sitting across from my wife, hearing that we had fallen into the same trap. I don't want to live like this, she continued. Honestly, I've lost interest in intimacy with you, just like you seem to have lost interest in me. We've stopped being lovers, and that scares me. Her words shook me. How did we get here? This wasn't supposed to happen to us. Sexual boredom, it's something you hear about, but you never think it'll happen in your own marriage. And yet here I was, realizing we'd become one of those couples. We had forgotten what it meant to be close, both physically and emotionally. But we can fix this, I said, desperately searching for a solution. We can start going on dates again, take trips, spend more time together. We can try new things, reignite what we used to have. She sighed and took my hand. Thomas, I know you'd do anything for me. But this is more than that. It's still going to be the same routine. We might try something new, but eventually, we'll fall back into the same patterns. Her words hung in the air, heavy and difficult to process. I sat there, thinking, trying to find a way out, but deep down, I knew she was right. We were proud of our marriage, always thought we had it all figured out. But now I was realizing that love wasn't enough. A relationship requires constant effort, even after decades together. I just want to feel that spark again, she said, her voice filled with pain. Do you remember what it was like in the beginning? When we couldn't keep our hands off each other. We used to make time, even when life was busy. We wanted to be together, no matter what. Now, I can't even remember the last time I felt that way. But you still love me, right? I asked, and there was a flicker of doubt in my voice that surprised even me. Of course I do, she said quickly, her eyes meeting mine, full of warmth and regret. But love is one thing. Passion is another. I want to feel that passion for you again, Thomas. I want us to have that chemistry back. I don't want sex to be this rare, occasional thing. I want it to be something that brings us joy again. Her words cut deep. I couldn't deny that I had felt the same way at times. The passion that had once burned so brightly between us had dimmed. We had slipped into a comfortable routine, taking each other for granted. But that didn't mean I stopped desiring her. I just didn't know how to bring back what we used to have. And how do you think we do that? I asked, feeling like this was the moment of truth. She looked at me for a long time, as if deciding whether to keep talking. I think we need to do something drastic, she finally said. We've fallen into a routine. We need to break out of it. We need to try something new in our sex life. Something that'll wake us up. I wasn't sure exactly what she meant, but I knew there was some truth to it. I couldn't just let us drift along, hoping things would get better on their own. We had to do something, and fast. All right, I said, feeling a surge of determination. We'll try. We'll find a way to bring the passion back. We'll face this together. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to fix this, to get back what we had. Because I want it too. Martha smiled at me, a small but genuine smile. I knew the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. But I was ready to fight for our marriage, for our love, for both of us. She took my hand, and we sat there in silence for a while. But it was a silence that spoke volumes. We both knew this was only the beginning of a long journey, but we were ready to take it together. Marta took my hand, and her touch grounded me in the middle of an emotional storm. I looked at her, still trying to understand how we'd gotten to this point. "Thomas, I know you would move mountains for me if you could," she said quietly, shaking her head. "But in the end, it's still us. The same dynamic. Nothing changes. And eventually, even all these efforts will get boring." Her words hung in the air like a cold breeze cutting through me, reaching the deepest parts of my mind. Sure, these ideas were a step in the right direction, but they felt shallow, convenient. She was right, we hadn't been learning or experiencing anything new. We'd just been going through the motions. "So, what are you proposing?" I asked, feeling a wave of unease rising as I waited for her answer. I was following her thoughts, but now she was throwing me off. Marta hesitated, as if gathering her thoughts before making her suggestion. "I think we need something more unconventional. A reset. Something new and exciting that could bring life back into our romance and reignite the spark in our sex life." I sat there, stunned by her words, unable to process what they really meant at first. It sounded almost absurd, but at this point, I was willing to consider anything. "That sounds intriguing," I said uncertainly. "What do you suggest?" Her response was unexpected. "I think I need to start dating other people." My initial curiosity quickly evaporated, replaced by confusion and shock. "Wait, what?" I pulled my hand away, staring at her as I tried to make sense of what I just heard. "Say that again. I don't think I heard you correctly." "I need to start dating other people," she repeated calmly, like it was the most normal thing to say. My heart sank. I leaned back in my chair, trying to gather my thoughts, then leaned forward again, frowning. "Are you serious? Have you lost your mind?" Marta seemed a bit taken aback by my reaction, but she didn't back down. "No, Thomas, I haven't lost my mind," she insisted. "I've thought about this a lot. I really believe this is what we need." I shook my head, still not believing what I was hearing. "Marta, you've come up with some wild ideas before, but this crosses the line. I don't think you understand how crazy this sounds." "It's not crazy, Thomas," she countered, her voice calm but firm. "If you let me explain, you'll understand." I reluctantly nodded. "Yes, please. Explain how you think dating other men will improve our relationship and reignite our passion." She looked at me seriously. "I'm not suggesting cheating on you. But I'm proposing going on dates with other men, away from you." Her words hung in the air again, as I tried to process them. My mind was spinning with a storm of emotions. "Real romantic dates?" I asked, still hoping I'd misunderstood something. "Exactly," she confirmed, without a hint of hesitation. "Yes, real dates. As if we weren't married." I felt anger flare up inside me. "So, what, are you going to sleep with them on the first date? Or will you make them wait, like you did with me?" My frustration grew with each second. "Thomas, I never said anything about sex," she replied, her voice still calm, but now I could tell she was trying to maintain control over the situation. I stared at her, words caught in my throat. I didn't know whether to laugh, scream, or just walk out. My head was pounding with thoughts, and suddenly, sarcasm slipped out of me. "So, let me get this straight, you're suggesting dating other men," I began slowly, as if trying to break it down for myself. "And this wouldn't be cheating, but just expanding our experience, right?" I tilted my head, watching her. "Interesting." Marta tensed but didn't say anything, clearly waiting to see where I was going with this. "You know, since we're being so modern and all, why not take it a step further?" I continued, sliding my chair closer. Why not go all the way and become swingers? I paused for effect, watching her expression closely before continuing with a serious tone, as if I'd thought this plan through carefully. Just picture it, we could go to swinger parties, you know, the kind where everything is open and honest. You're with one guy, I'm with his wife. And we all understand that it's just sex, nothing personal. No feelings involved, just fun. We could even have a set of rules, like getting tested before each meeting to keep things safe. We could make a schedule, you get Fridays, I'll take Saturdays. I'm sure this will add the excitement you were looking for. And of course, we'll debrief after each encounter, what worked, what didn't. Open communication is key, right? Marta's face turned pale, her eyes wide in shock. I could see her mental image of a light experiment shattering with every word I spoke. She tried to say something, but her voice caught in her throat. I kept going, ignoring her growing panic. We could even host a party to celebrate this new phase of our lives. Invite all our friends, let everyone know we're an open couple now. Or maybe we start bringing them over for, well, you know. I'm sure there are a few couples who'd be interested in trying it out. In fact, I've got a couple of friends in mind, reliable people, and I know they'd be up for it. What do you say? Marta was silent. She clearly hadn't anticipated this. I could see the despair on her face. Her confidence, the one she had when she first brought up this idea, was crumbling right in front of me. Wait, Thomas. Are you serious? She finally asked, her voice trembling. I pretended to think about it, then responded with a grim seriousness. Absolutely. Isn't this what you wanted? Or is my version a bit too extreme for you? Did you expect me to just sit at home while you went out on your romantic dates with other men, then come home and share a bed with me like nothing happened? Or were you hoping I'd just turn a blind eye to your exploration? Marta was on the verge of tears now. Her eyes glistened with emotion, her hands shaking. She clearly hadn't imagined her idea would go this far. I didn't think it would get this far, she whispered. I just wanted to bring back what we had, add some variety. But this isn't what I meant. I smirked, leaning back in my chair. Variety, huh? Well, here it is, in full swing. Now you see that this isn't just a stroll in the park. You wanted to shake up our marriage? Be ready for the consequences. Because I'm not going to be sidelined in your little games. Or is this not what you expected? Marta buried her face in her hands, her shoulders trembling with repressed emotions. I could see her vision of an easy fix collapsing in real time. Inside, I was boiling with anger, disappointment, and hurt. It felt like all those years together, all the things we'd built, were being tossed aside for some ridiculous fantasy of new and exciting. Marta couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She broke down, and I knew then she realized the depth of the abyss her words had opened up between us. Marta took my hand, and her touch grounded me, stirring a hurricane of emotions. I looked at her, not understanding how we got to this moment. Thomas, I know you'd move mountains for me if you could, she said quietly, shaking her head. But in the end, it's still us. The same dynamic. Nothing changes. And eventually, we'll get tired of it. Her words hung in the air like a cold wind, penetrating deep into my mind. These thoughts were definitely steps in the right direction, but they felt so convenient, superficial. She was right. We hadn't learned anything new or experienced anything different, we were just living the routine. So, what are you suggesting? I asked, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over me as I waited for her answer. I was trying to follow my thoughts, but now she was confusing me. Marta froze, like she was gathering herself before making her proposal. I think we need something more unconventional. A reset. Something new and exciting that could bring life back into our romance and reignite the spark in our sex life. I sat there, stunned by her words, unable to grasp their meaning. It sounded almost absurd, but at this point, I was willing to adapt to any suggestion. That sounds intriguing, I said uncertainly. And what do you propose? Her answer was unexpected. I think I need to start dating other people. My initial excitement evaporated instantly, leaving confusion and shock behind. Wait, what? I pulled my hand away and looked at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. Repeat that, I don't think I heard you right. I need to start dating other people, she repeated calmly, as if she were talking about something ordinary. My heart froze. I leaned back in my chair, gathering my thoughts, then leaned forward again, frowning. Are you serious? Have you lost your mind? My voice was full of disbelief. Marta seemed a bit taken aback by my reaction, but she wasn't backing down. No, Thomas, I haven't lost my mind, she insisted. I've thought a lot about this. I really believe this is what we need. I shook my head, not believing my ears. Marta, you've suggested strange ideas before, but this crosses a line. I don't think you realize how crazy this sounds. It's not crazy, Thomas, she replied, her voice calm but firm. If you let me explain, you'll understand. Begrudgingly, I nodded. Yeah, please, explain. Explain how you think dating other men would improve our relationship and bring the passion back into our marriage. She looked at me seriously. I'm not suggesting changes for you. But I am suggesting I date other men, outside of you. Her words once again hung in the air as I struggled to process them. My head was spinning from the emotional storm. Real romantic dates? I asked skeptically, hoping this was some kind of misunderstanding. Exactly, she confirmed without a moment of hesitation. Yes, they would be real dates. Like if we weren't married. I felt anger flare up inside me. So, would you sleep with them on the first date? Or make them wait, like you did with me? My frustration grew with each passing second. Thomas, I never mentioned sex, her voice remained calm, but now I felt she was struggling to maintain control. I looked at Marta, and the words got stuck in my throat. I didn't know how to react to her proposal, laugh, scream, or just get up and leave. My head was pounding with thoughts, and at some point, sarcasm slipped out by itself. So, you're proposing to date other men? I began slowly, as if talking to myself. And it won't be cheating, but rather just, expanding experience, right? I tilted my head, watching her. Interesting. Marta tensed but didn't say anything, clearly waiting to see where I was going with this. You know, since we're being so modern, why not go further? I continued, sliding my chair a little closer. Why don't we become, what's it called? Ah yes, swingers. I paused, watching her reaction, then continued seriously, as if this was a well-thought-out plan of action. Imagine, we could go to swinger parties, you know, where everything happens openly and honestly. You with one guy, me with his wife. And we'd all understand perfectly well that it's just sex, nothing personal. No feelings, just fun. All in the spirit of our progressive relationship. We could even set up rules. Like, getting tested before every meeting to make sure everything's safe. We could even draw up a schedule, Friday for you, and Saturday for me. I'm sure it would keep our marriage exciting, like you wanted. And of course, we'd discuss everything after the meetings, what we liked, what we didn't. It's so important to be honest with each other, right? Marta paled, her eyes widening. I could see her vision of a light experiment falling apart with each word I spoke. She tried to say something, but her voice seemed to get stuck in her throat. I kept going, ignoring her confusion. We could even throw a party to celebrate this new phase in our lives. Invite all our friends, let everyone know we're an open couple now. Or better yet, we could start by inviting them over. You know, to see how it works in real life. Why not experiment? I know a few couples who are definitely interested. We could start with them, reliable, proven people. What do you think? Marta was silent. She clearly hadn't expected this turn. I saw the desperation spreading across her face. Her confidence from the start of the conversation was gone, replaced by bewilderment. "Wait, Thomas. Are you serious?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. I pretended to think for a moment, then answered with grim seriousness, "Absolutely. Isn't this what you wanted? Or don't you like my version? Maybe you expected something more, delicate. Did you think I'd just stay home and wait while you went on your romantic dates with other men, and then we'd just crawl into bed together like nothing happened? Or were you hoping I'd just turn a blind eye to your exploration?" Marta was on the verge of tears. Her eyes glistened with tension, her hands trembling. She hadn't anticipated her suggestion to go this far. I didn't think it could go this far," she whispered. "I just wanted to bring back the excitement we used to have. But this isn't what I meant." I smirked, leaning back in my chair. "Excitement, you say? Well, here's excitement in full bloom. Only now, you realize it's not just a walk in the park. You want to shake up our marriage? Be prepared for the consequences. Because I'm not going to be on the sidelines of your games. Or is this really not what you expected?" Marta buried her face in her hands, her shoulders trembling with barely restrained emotion. I watched her image of the independent and modern woman crumble before my eyes. Inside me, everything was bubbling, anger, frustration, betrayal. But more than anything, I felt betrayed. As if our entire life together, all our years, were being thrown out the window for some silly fantasy of new and exciting. Marta couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She broke down, and I could see that she realized where her words had led us. Anger mixed with disappointment swirled within me, but I tried to keep control. She sat there, trembling, and all she could manage to say was, "Is this really our only option?" Sarcasm begged to be voiced, and I couldn't hold back. "The only option?" I repeated with a cold smile. "Of course not. We could try a million other ideas. Like throwing parties every week, inviting whoever you want. I could even do you a little favor, become your manager, find the perfect partners for our meetings. Just don't forget that you'll have to share all the details afterward. We're an honest couple, remember? Everything out in the open." Marta stayed silent, her eyes wide in horror at what I was saying. She wanted to interject, but I pressed on, not letting her cut in. "Or you know what? We could try an even more sophisticated version. Let's start with your colleagues. You work late often, and then, when you're done with one of them, we'll come home, and you'll learn to tell me about all the inspiring moments of your day. We'll be on the same page. And no betrayal, right? Everything's honest, with my full approval. We're adults, we understand it's just physical, nothing personal, right?" Marta was looking at me in shock, as if she didn't recognize me. She really didn't expect this turn of events. I paused for effect, but if we want to get really creative, we could organize special weekends. We could find a couple to swap with, you know, to keep things exciting. We could even set up a schedule, I'll be with his wife today, you'll be with him tomorrow. After all, this is the kind of variety you were talking about, isn't it? Marta lowered her head, her hands trembling. I could see her world falling apart. She thought her version of the experiment would be easy and almost innocent, but now she was faced with reality, a reality that was much more primitive than her idea. "Thomas, wait. That's not what I meant," she whispered through tears, her voice so soft I barely heard her. I leaned back in my chair and looked at her, feeling disappointment boil inside me. "What did you mean, Marta?" I asked, and this time, the sarcasm was replaced with cold seriousness. "Did you think this was some kind of game? Did you think I'd just understand and accept this as normal? That it would be as easy for me as it is for you?" She didn't answer. Tears streamed down her face, and I could see her trying to find the words to explain her feelings, but she couldn't say anything. "You know, I really don't get it," I said. "Do you really think that in order to fix our marriage, you need to date other men? Is this what you call a solution? Why do you think that's the only way to bring back what we had?" Marta lifted her head, her face pale, trembling. "I just didn't know how else," she began, but I interrupted her. "So, you really thought that all we needed were other partners? Maybe the problem isn't in our sex life but the fact that we've stopped being honest with each other. That we don't really talk anymore." Marta looked at me, her eyes filled with pain. She hadn't expected me to take her suggestion so seriously, and with such sarcasm. Her idea was falling apart before her eyes, and she realized the situation was far more complicated than she first thought. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger that was bubbling inside me. This moment was critical, and despite all the sarcasm I just unleashed, I understood that the future of our marriage depended on what happened next. Marta looked lost, her eyes swollen with tears, but I could feel the pain in her words and actions, a pain she hadn't realized was there until this moment. "All right," I said in a calming tone. "Let's try to find other solutions. I understand that you're confused. And, honestly, so am I. This is complicated. But if we're both willing to change something, let's look for options that don't involve other people in our marriage." Marta wiped her tears and looked at me with hope. "Are you really willing to try?" I nodded. "Listen, we've been together for many years. We've gone through a lot, kids, careers, problems. I'm not going to destroy all of that just because we've hit a rough patch. But if you feel like our marriage has become boring, if you're not happy, let's work on it together, without bringing in other people." Marta hesitated, as if she couldn't believe I was really open to this conversation. "But what do you suggest?" she asked, her voice full of doubt. "For starters," I leaned in a little closer, "to close the distance between us, we could go back to where we started. We've stopped being just lovers, we've stopped being friends. Let's start by spending more time together. I'm not talking about major changes, but a few evenings a week, just the two of us. No work, no phones, no outside distractions." She was silent, but I could see a spark of interest in her eyes. "We could go back to dating, like when we first started. Do you remember how we'd have picnics, go to concerts? When we did things for fun, not just out of obligation." Marta smiled slightly. "I remember. You always tried so hard to surprise me." I smirked, feeling the tension ease just a bit. "Yeah, and you'd always laugh at my attempts to be romantic. But that's the point, Marta. We've forgotten how to have fun together. Everything has become too serious. Work, routines, responsibilities. Maybe it's time we relaxed a little and learned to enjoy each other again." She thought for a moment, and I decided to push further. "Maybe we could try new hobbies together. Or, if you want something more exotic, we could experiment in our intimate life, but only between us. You said you wanted variety, right? Why don't we explore that, but within the bounds of our relationship? After all, who says we can't have something new and exciting?" Marta looked at me carefully, as if seriously considering what I was suggesting. "You'd really want to try something new in our intimate life? Marta, I married you because I love you. And if you want to try something new, why not? But only between us. No need to bring anyone else into it." She softened, and I could see a look of relief cross her face. "I'm just afraid that if we don't change something now, we'll lose each other," she admitted. "We're not losing each other," I said firmly. "If we're both willing to work on this, we can get through anything. I'm not going to leave you because things have gotten difficult. But we need to be honest with each other, no more dating other people. Are you ready for that?" Marta nodded, and I could see the tension slowly leaving her face. "Yes, Thomas. I'm ready. I don't want things to end the way I feared." I took her hand and squeezed it. Then let's start working on this today. Together. When I took her hand, a tense silence fell between us. It felt like everything that needed to be said had already been spoken. We were on the edge, yet still clinging to the remnants of what once held us together. I almost started to believe that we could find a way out when Marta suddenly yanked her hand out of mine. "No, Thomas, this won't work," she said, her voice trembling, but there was a strange determination in her eyes. "What are you doing?" I asked, feeling that something irreversible was starting to happen. Marta stood up, her face twisted with a mixture of fear and confidence, and suddenly, she headed to the bedroom. For a few moments, I sat there in shock, trying to process what was happening. Then I heard the thud of her suitcase hitting the floor. She had begun packing quickly. "Marta, what are you doing?" I jumped up, my thoughts racing frantically to catch up with her actions. "I'm leaving, Thomas," she said calmly, packing her things into the suitcase with alarming resolve. "I've realized I can't do this anymore. This isn't life. We're just fooling ourselves. We can't bring back what we've lost." "What do you mean?" "We just agreed to work on this. You said you were ready." My voice cracked, and I could feel everything spiraling out of control. Marta didn't stop. She kept packing. "Thomas, I've thought about this for a long time. I just can't keep living this lie. I've already made my decision. We can't save our marriage." "And where are you going?" Sarcasm and despair mixed in my voice. "To your imaginary lover. You haven't even started seeing anyone." She suddenly stopped, her face went pale, and she looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. She swallowed nervously and finally said, "Thomas, the thing is, I already have." Those words hit me like lightning. The air seemed to leave the room. I stood frozen, unable to believe what I'd just heard. "What?" I asked quietly, almost not trusting my own ears. "I've already started seeing someone else," she said softly, her voice almost emotionless. "It started a few months ago. I didn't want to tell you, but now there's no point in hiding it. I've fallen in love with him, Thomas." The world around me started to blur. Everything she had just said didn't make sense. You're already seeing someone." I could barely get the words out. "Yes, and I'm leaving to be with him," she replied with sudden coldness. "I thought I could fix us. But now I realize, it's impossible. I've made my choice." I stood there, unable to move. Time seemed to slow down. We had just been discussing how we were going to save our marriage, and now it turns out she had been living a different life behind my back all this time. "What's his name?" I asked, as if in a fog, not even realizing why I needed to know. She hesitated for a moment, then quietly answered, "His name is Stephen." Shock hit me in the chest, and suddenly I remembered all her mentions of some friend, and the puzzle pieces began to fall into place. He wasn't just a random fling. She had been with him for some time, and I was a fool for not seeing it. I looked at her, trying to understand how the woman I loved and trusted more than anyone could do this. How could she have been pretending all this time that we had a chance, that we could fix our lives, while she had already been with someone else? "Are you done packing?" I asked with icy calm, trying to hide the tremble in my voice. "Yes," she answered quietly, zipping up the suitcase. "Then go," I said coldly. "And don't ever come back." She picked up the suitcase and walked past me to the door. For a moment, she stopped as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't find the words. The next second, the door slammed shut, and I was left alone in our empty apartment. My life, as I knew it, was over.
What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.